we're going to have a meeting. The Prime Minister's going to have a meeting with the Chinese President, Xi Jinping. First time in 5 years that he's deigned to allow an Australian Prime Minister in his presence. Amazing. Joining me is Michael Shoebridge. He's a former Senior Defence and Intelligence official and now Head of Strategic Analysis Australia. Michael, always great to see you. How important is this meeting that the Prime Minister is going to have with China's President on Wednesday?
Well, Andrew, it is a very important meeting in one way, but in another way, it's just a meeting. So it's good that our national leaders will be in the same room talking to each other. But, you know, this isn't Nixon goes to China. It's not the fall of the Berlin Wall. It really will deliver far less than some of the expectations, which is why I think it's good Mr Albanese has been pretty low-key about what might come out of it.
Yes. I told people at the top of the show, watch him like a hawk, about what he's not going to say, the things he refuses now to make a fuss about. But you're quite right. Praise him for not having high expectations, etc., etc. But my concern, Michael, is you look at what China's actually doing. You look at the Solomons in particular, which is our neighbour, right? Dangerously close in terms of sea lanes and all that kind of stuff. Isn't China actually, meanwhile, getting its hooks deeper into the Solomon Islands under the Albanese government's watch without the government actually saying anything?
Well, I think this is what Beijing wants. The price of the meeting is silence from our government as Beijing goes about its business. And that's true whether it's influence in Southeast Asia or in the Solomons with Mr Sogavare as the big opportunity. I think that's something that the government has to be really wary about and not pay the price of silence, because Australia's changed the global view of China by speaking up calmly and firmly.
Yeah, but it's absolutely correct. I find it amazing that the Albanese government made such a fuss about the Solomon Islands getting to Chinese orbit under the previous government, has said nothing when the Solomon Islands has cancelled an election, told its broadcaster to stop criticising it, sent over its police to China for training in crowd suppression, right? Plus more, banned US and British warships from docking, and nothing. Crickets. How does that work?
Well, Andrew, you're right that we are on the wrong track with the Solomons and, in fact, with the whole of the South Pacific. But with the Solomons in particular, we've got in the embarrassing situation of trying to outbid Beijing on who can support an anti-democratic leader called Mr Sogavare. We need to stop trying to compete to be his security partner of choice. We could really use South Pacific workers in our economy, and they could really use that kind of employment instead of aid. That's what we should be talking about. But instead, we're competing with, we give him assault weapons, the Chinese give him water cannons.
Yeah, well, who's that going to be used against? I tell you what, this is all extremely ominous. But, you know, China's pleased enough with the government that it wants talks. What do you think's on China's agenda?
Well, Xi has a weakening domestic economy, and he wants to be left alone to pursue his strategic gains in places like the Solomons. So his attacks on Australia have probably run their course because all he's doing is drawing attention to Chinese aggression. So I think he's trying to get us to pay the price of silence so that Chinese consumers can have the privilege of drinking our wine and eating our lobsters. Now, I think it'd be great if the coercive trade measures were taken away. I think it'd be also great if Cheng Lei and Yang Hengjun were freed from the Chinese prison system.
Well, I think a lot of business people certainly like trade to resume and no questions asked. A winemaker told me we've got 2 years' supply of wine just sloshing around in tanks waiting for China to start drinking again.
But
can I just ask you one thing before you go, Michael? Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say we need to be a bit once bitten, twice shy and not just rush breathlessly back to thinking it's all back like it was with selling into China. There's increased market risk there. Our lobster and wine producers need still to develop other markets so they're not dependent on whether or not Xi's feeling happy in the moment.
I think there's a lot in that. We saw the danger of Europe becoming too dependent on Russian supplies. We might be getting too dependent, or we are too dependent, I think, already, on China buying our stuff. I mean, without China there to buy it, we're going to be as poor as church mice. Michael Shoebridge, thank you so much for your time.